Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, my friends. About 30 degrees this morning here. Touch of Arizona winter. Springtime in Minnesota. Here at the studios of Jim Hinckley's America, within spitting distance of legendary Route 66. Kingman, Arizona hasn't had much to speak of winter this year, but I'm not complaining about the cold, but it sure is dry. We've got a link up here for, I've gotten some questions about helping with the folks in Los Angeles, and I put up a link, and I have it on the James Hinckley Facebook page, and I'll be getting up some other information today about the fires in Los Angeles, and if you want to help, it's some vetted websites, vetted organizations that you can find ways to donate and help the folks in LA. A tragedy is still unfolding out that direction. And what we got to remember in these times is we pull together. We're all neighbors. We're all in this thing together. Politics aside, this isn't a time to be asking what political affiliation someone is. This is the time to be lending a hand. We're going to have Evan Stern with us today from, I think he's in New York City today. That's his home base. Evan has a most amazing podcast. It's called Vanishing Postcards. And gosh darn it, I'll tell you, Evan has a true gift as a storyteller. And he also has... he's an adventuresome traveler with an infectious curiosity. Makes for a near perfect combination. And we'll have him with us hopefully here pretty quick. And meanwhile, let me give you a couple little updates here. We've got some great programs coming up. We'll talk more about that soon. Hey, Brady, good morning. Good morning, Keith. God, we got some great folks with us already this morning. Absolutely wonderful. At the end of the program, we'll provide you some updates on things that we've got going for future programs. I think you're going to really like. We're on a roll this year. We're getting some fantastic guests, and got those things going. I finally got the final edit for the Route 66 anthology that I worked on with Joe Sonderman, Greg Hassman, Cheryl Eicher-Jett, Dries Bessels, Reese Martin. I've been really excited about this project, and we're getting close to the finish line. And, well, I'm hoping we can get that going pretty quick. Publication date looks like it's going to be fall of this year. Should be just an absolutely great book. I'm excited to work with such a talented team because it's like everything we do here. It's not just it's not a gym show. It's about the Route 66 community. And, well, that's the whole thing. It's all about community. And, well, that's what we try to do here. And speaking of community, next week we're going to talk to some folks that have really been transforming downtown Kingman. And I think and I think you're going to really like this as well. Other projects I've got going, I've been getting a lot of inquiries for interviews about the Route 66 Centennial, about nostalgia, and things of that nature. And I'm also getting a lot of reviews for I'm getting a lot of inquiries about helping and assisting putting together tours. Right now, I'm working with a Norwegian tour group, and it's going to be kind of an interesting project. Evan, how are you this morning?
I'm doing just fine, Jim. It's great to hear your voice.
Likewise, my friend. I'm still smiling over your adventures in New York.
Oh
We'll
goodness, it's never a dull day here. I'll tell you that much. Anytime I need any sort of stimulation, all I need to do is just step outside the apartment.
Well, that's the thing, and this ties into what I was talking about with you. You have an inquisitive nature. You're an adventuresome traveler, and if you're inquisitive and adventuresome, you can find those kind of exploits in just about any town, anywhere.
I absolutely agree. I think there's so much in our society that conditions us to, when we hear the word culture, a lot of people are conditioned to feel like they have to look abroad towards Europe or elsewhere. But the truth is that culture is everywhere, and all we have to do is look in our own backyards. I mean, so in fact, also you'll find some of the best culture out there are in places that are often totally ignored.
Yeah, it's great to travel international. I think that that's one of the shortcomings of Americans in general. But yeah, it's everywhere. And when you start getting around, being around people in general and talking to them, as you do with Vanishing Postcards, you realize how much more we have in common than we do that separates us.
Absolutely.
Our politicians like to tell us differently, but I think they profit from that. But when we
Sure.
get to visiting with people, it's different.
Yes.
Your podcast, when we met here in Kingman, I was very surprised that this was a kind of a new endeavor for you
Hmm.
because your professionalism was so evident.
Oh, well, I thank you so much for that. I mean, but yes, well, that was a new endeavor. I think a lifetime prepared me for it at the same time. You work for years paying bills as a bartender. You're going to learn how to talk with people. More than two people. You're going to learn how to talk with people in a position like that. And so I think. I tell everyone, vanishing postcards. It was just, it was one of those things where I am not a trained journalist. I've never studied journalism, but I'm really just one of those people who fell in love with podcasts over the last 10 years. And I'd listen to them when I was cooking or cleaning in my New York apartment. And, around the same time, the YouTube algorithm kept suggesting travel vlog videos, influencers filming themselves in Instagrammable destinations. And I never really saw the ways that I like to travel represented in any of them. And so eventually my inner voice just started telling me, well, maybe there's something that you could do on your own. And so I grabbed a microphone, I taught myself a few things, and it really just kind of started as simply as me walking into a bar in my home state of Texas to see what stories I could gather. But things snowballed, fell into alignment, and it's really been the most incredible journey now. I'm now entering my fifth year of playing with it.
Well, we're all enriched by what you've done and inspired by the people you've shared their stories. And I gotta tell you, Evan, like say that I I joke. It's only a half joke that I'm modern Amish. I have no clue what I'm doing, like this program. I just push buttons and play with things until it happens. I'm one of those people. Unfortunately, it's a shortcoming. When I put the bicycle together at Christmas, I don't bother with instructions. But when I notice that the seat is where the handlebars go, then I know I've got a problem. But your professionalism with this and your ability to get people to share stories and then weave it into a larger picture,
Mhm.
it's just damned impressive.
Oh, well, I thank you so much, and it's my great honor. But I think it's yeah, it really is just about. I find knowing how to ask. I think listening is 90% of it right there, but then it's also just about knowing how to ask the right questions. I think that the worst thing you could possibly do um, is just say to someone, "Well, tell me about yourself," because they have nowhere to go.
Right.
I think, whenever I'm interviewing someone, no matter who they are, I just like to start off. I say, "Can you describe for me your childhood home?" And it's amazing what a simple question like that, that's targeted, will unlock. And you just kind of build from there and see where the journey goes and takes you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be careful because when you ask people, tell me about yourself, you may not like what you get. I'm so glad though that people such as yourself are recording these stories and sharing them now. And I'm relatively a latecomer to doing this. A lot of this was not available, when I was coming up. And I have always, like you, like to listen to people. I've always liked to
Mm,
listen to my when I was a child. One of my best friends was a World War I veteran,
mm.
and I've had the opportunity to meet some amazing people. But at that time, there was no way to really preserve those stories. I've had a Tuskegee Airman that was a friend, a Navajo code talker. One fellow that I befriended here in Kingman was the Navy's black bantamweight boxing champion in 1940.
Wow.
And yeah, these stories are out there. How
Well,
in the
and it's
world?
important to preserve them too, because like ephemera, if you don't record them, they get lost to the generations sometimes. So
Yeah, and the other thing that you do so well with this is it's kind of like everybody has a story. We have a tendency to gravitate towards the celebrities, but some of the most fascinating people are the ones that you've passed every day on the street and never noticed.
absolutely, absolutely.
How in the world, may I ask, does a person go from, was it Austin, Texas, to New York City?
The yes, I'm one of a proud few who can claim to have been born and raised in the city of Austin, Texas. Now everybody's moving there. But yes, so I am a child of the theater, and you could say that it was the lure of the spotlights. I left high school. I went to Sarah Lawrence College. Oh, hi Brady. Yes, I'm always a pleasure to connect with a fellow Texan. But yes, I came up to New York for school and I ended up staying. But it was absolutely the lure of the theater is what brought me to New York. And I pursued a career professionally in the theater for many years. I did a lot of work around the country in regional theaters. But I also got very actively involved in the cabaret scene here in New York City, where I got a lot of work as a singer, and I performed at Carnegie Hall. I performed a solo show at Lincoln Center on the songs of Johnny Mercer's South. But I think we were talking a moment ago about how life really did prepare me for Vanishing Postcards and podcasting in a lot of ways. The way that I would structure my cabaret shows. For instance, the show that I did at Lincoln Center was on the songs of Johnny Mercer's South. I would always choose a theme. The first show that I did in New York was on the songs of World War II, and it was very important for me to pay very close attention to what was spoken and said in between each song, to make certain that my evenings had a sense of narrative architecture to them. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm doing the same thing now with Vanishing Postcards. It's just instead of songs, I'm sharing and sound clips from people. And it's my own narrative that stitches everything together. Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting turn of events. I imagine there was a little bit of shall we say, an adjustment period to go from. I know Austin has become very, urban and upscale, but to still go from Austin to New York, that must have been required a little adaptation.
Well, of course, unquestionably. I mean, I still detest the cold. I'll tell you that right now. And but and I will always be a Texan. I like to think of myself as bicultural. But at the same time, I mean, I really actually do believe that there are New Yorkers all over the world that just don't happen to live here yet. And I, New York is a place that absolutely called me, And I'll also say at the same time, I'm not the kind of person that has ever needed that title of New Yorker. It's not something I've ever. There are people out there that want to be called New Yorkers. I've never wanted that, but at some point it did become home. And now I think that most people probably do view me as a New Yorker. Whenever I travel the country, driving Route 66, this, that, and the other, I'm always introduced as being from New York before being from Texas. But I love city living. I love being able to walk everywhere. I don't own a car, and the cultural opportunities that you get here, you're just not going to find elsewhere. But
No.
being from Texas is a gift. I mean, I love that balance, and it's important as well to get out of the city, which is what Vanishing Postcards has enabled me to do. It's been an incredible gift.
The big cities get short shift, and I'm guilty of that too because I'm most comfortable in any town that has less than 3 stoplights. But yeah, there's such a diversity and a vibrancy in the cities.
There is,
And yeah,
and I will say too. I mean, New York, each neighborhood is a village unto itself, and so I think in some ways you surprisingly still kind of get a little bit of small town experiences here in New York when you really look at the neighborhoods that people live in. They all know me at the coffee shops and the cleaners and the grocery stores. It's unique in that way.
Your podcast, have you had a particular story person that you've met through your podcast that really has inspired you, really touched you?
Oh, so many. Really and truly too many to name. I mean, I think there was a remarkable man. The first season of Vanishing Postcards was entirely centered in Texas. And I did an episode on Black cowboys. There's a man that I met by the name of Larry Callis who opened this storefront museum in this town outside of Houston called, gosh, I can't even remember the name of the town right now that we're talking. But it's just this simple no frills museum that's in this supermarket. And he's this man. He said that growing up, he was a cowboy. He said all of my my parents were cowboys, grandparents were cowboys, and people don't know that black cowboys exist. And so in retirement, he opened up this black cowboy museum. And it's just how he spends his days educating people about the contributions of black cowboys. I think about this family that I met in South Texas named the Avilas. In Texas, on the border, there's this incredible tradition of conjunto music. And their father started this museum that was dedicated to showcasing the art of conjunto. And I just think about the incredible work that they put in keeping this museum going in the small town of San Benito. But it's just the people. Vanishing Postcards is really all about spotlighting the custodians and stewards of our cultural history. And of course, those, just along Route 66, I mean, the personalities that you meet who fill those roles are incredible. I mean, you meet someone like Harley Russell in Eric, Oklahoma.
Oh God,
you're not going to forget about someone like that anytime soon.
Harley, when his wife Annabelle was alive, he had some guardrails, but with her passing, he has no guardrails and no filter. And boy, yeah, that's one of those things. Harley is one of those people. You can't really explain this. You have to experience Harley.
Oh, you do. And then, and Harley is one of those irreplaceable figures because, no one can step into and fill a void like like that, quite like Harley. And I see Brady has commented here. Thank you for refreshing my memory, Brady. Yes, that is in Rosenberg, Texas. I knew it started with an R. It's early. Jim is a good early morning guy. I'm admittedly not. So sometimes it takes a moment to think about things there.
I wouldn't say I'm an early morning person. I would say that it's almost lunchtime for me. But anyhow, you mentioned the Black Cowboys.
Mhm.
I had a chance when I was in Victorville. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Herb Jeffries.
Yeah, I know the name. I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I've heard the name definitely.
He
I think
passed
you told me about him. I can't remember.
he passed away a few years ago, 100 and some years old. But with your background in theater, he was very interesting. In the short version of Herb Jeffrey, he was I can't remember which way it went. One parent was Ethiopian and the other was from Sicily. And
Mm,
he started his music career in the 20s in New Orleans with Louis Armstrong.
hmm,
But he was bothered by the fact that the African American audience loved the Western movies, but they were all white. So
hmm.
he started a genre of singing cowboy, Roy Rogers type westerns with all African American casts.
Wow.
And then after that faded, he reinvented himself in the 50s and passed himself off as an Italian crooner.
Mm.
Yeah, kind of an
Oh
interesting
no,
thing.
you're talking that's exactly the kind of stuff I like. You're speaking my language right now, Jim.
Yes. With New York, there's so many stories in layers. You mentioned the neighbor, every neighborhood is basically a village. But gosh, you must have. I want to also go back and when you mentioned custodian, that is a
Hmm.
perfect way to describe these people.
Hmm.
They're not out for publicity. They're not out for the limelight. They just want to preserve and share this
Hmm.
history and this culture.
Yeah.
The diversity in New York is, I think, any of the big cities, but New York specifically, the diversity gives it a rich microcosm of the American experience that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Hmm. Yes, I mean, I think a lot of times I meet people who say, "Well, New York really isn't America," well, because it's so different from so many other places that you find in the country. But I actually think that New York is quintessentially American. I really think it is the only. It couldn't exist anywhere other than America. And when you talk about diversity, it's like I think. I heard someone once say that the United States doesn't have a culture, the United States has an idea. And, the idea of this country is, it doesn't matter where you're from. Let's get some really smart, hardworking people together and let's try to build something new. And I think that that's something that you see and experience every day in New York.
Well, I would take it another take on this is that New York City is America, whereas small town America is actually the one that's suffering because it's becoming very generic
Mm,
in a lot.
yes.
Last time I was down in Chattanooga, I was really having grown up and spent time there as a child. I was surprised by how the Southern accent is kind of becoming a lost thing down there.
Hmm. Well, but it's like Michael Wallace said that he views Route 66 as a metaphor for America before it was generic. And a quote that has really stuck with me for years is Charles Kuralt once said, "You can find your way across this country using burger joints the way a navigator uses stars." And the reason that quote has stuck with me is because the kinds of burger joints he was talking about with career waitresses and just memories etched in their grime are just getting harder and harder to find. And so I'm really like you. I'm so interested in just finding those surviving places and the people who are working hard to keep that individuality and history going, because it's
Uh,
not easy. It's not easy. And so often, when a business, when one of those treasured burger joints closes, I mean, you'll in my hometown of Austin, for instance, you'll have all these people come out of the woodwork saying, "Oh my goodness, this is horrible, this is so sad." But the first question is, where were you You know, where were you? Come on, we gotta go out and support these places because
Ah.
it's really hard work to keep a business going, and these places need our support. And so I'm really all about shining a light on the people who are out there working hard to keep these places going.
I agree, and that's probably one of the allure of Route 66. And even though there's great mom and pop stuff on US 60, US 50, on Route 66, it has become a living museum where people not only keep these places going, like Clanton's Cafe since the 20s or the Ariston Cafe, but they're recreating these experiences and sometimes with a twist.
Mhm.
And I think that's some of the draw. That's what makes Route 66 kind of special.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You mentioned these mom and pops and quirky places. I've got a few that come to mind I found over the years. There was a place called Mr. Critter's Pizza up in Coos Bay, Oregon. And you could order your pizza. It was all custom made, but you could order it with elk or kangaroo meat or alligator, just the weirdest things. And another one I loved was Juan's Red Dragon in Socorro, New Mexico. It was a little Chinese fella and a Mexican gal, and it's the only place I know where you could order egg rolls and enchiladas or kimchi and chili verde. And yeah.
Well, I mean, but here in New York, we have you know, we have these restaurants. You know, there's one not far from where I live called Flor de Mayo, where half the menu is Chinese and the other half is Peruvian, because those are who are working in the kitchens. And it's just, I mean, so many. We have great restaurants here that just happen that way. And Houston. You know, my parents live in Houston, and you go there, you'll find dishes like Viet Cajun crawfish, where you have you know, crawfish cooked in Vietnamese style, or you'll go to a barbecue restaurant that's pure Texas barbecue, but the pit masters are Vietnamese, and you can get a side of brisket fried rice, and I mean it's absolutely wonderful.
But
Um,
but that, you know, that's what people are forgetting.
mhm,
That is America. That is the American experience right there. The
100%.
blending of cultures, the blurring of cultures,
Hmm.
and it becomes, you know, a generation or two from now, that'll be, well, that's viewed as American.
Absolutely.
Right now it's quirky, but
No, they say American is apple pie. It's important to remember that apple pie came from the Dutch, you know?
uh, yeah, it is. That is very important to remember. Do you in your travels have you gotten into some of the other, like, Los Angeles area at all?
I love Los Angeles. I really do, and it's of course heartbreaking to witness what's happening there right now. I know people who have lost homes,
Mhm.
but and so you know the horrible human loss that's happening. But you think of the cultural historic loss that's going on right now, and just you know, I mean, it's staggering.
Yeah.
You know, I try not to live life with regrets, but a huge regret that I have right now is that for some reason the last time I was there, I didn't make it out to see Will Rogers home,
Yeah.
which has been lost.
Yeah.
And it's a you know it's there has to be a conversation about as Los Angeles rebuilds. There has to be a serious conversation about cultural preservation and cultural restoration,
Yeah.
because it's you know my heart is very heavy for everyone out there right now.
Is a disaster of just epic proportions, and it's this brings out the best and worst in people, and
Mhm.
the seeing the people pulling together. I've got some good friends out there, and like Planet Fitness has opened up for people to use the showers and the Wi-Fi,
Mhm.
and In
Mhm.
and Out Burger is giving free food to all the firefighters. It really brings things out, and
It does. Mhm.
good and bad.
No,
And
absolutely.
I know I pick on the politicians a lot, but it's like the old saying goes: "Don't tell my mom I'm a politician; she thinks I'm in prison." Uh,
Yes. No, but it's just now is Now is absolutely no time for finger pointing or
No, no, no.
division in the least. It's, these people need our help and support and love, and we have to find a way to get it to them. We really do.
I was very fortunate. Like say, Los Angeles is another city that gets short shift, especially among the Route 66 community. And I've mentioned this before, and I was wondering what you thought of this. But I think the reason the cities, Chicago, St. Louis, Los Angeles, get short shift with the Route 66 community is we've sold Route 66 as small town America,
Hmm.
and people don't equate the cities with small town America.
I think there's truth to that, but I think that's part of the magic and wonder of. I mean, but the reason that Route 66 is the legend that it is because it starts in Chicago. It's anchored by Chicago and Los Angeles. And, I think that, I asked Scott Piotrowski, the head of the California Association, I mean, how much of Route 66's mystique is bound up with the fact that it ends in Los Angeles. And he's like, all of it, all of it. And you think, I mean, the people but you think, Los Angeles drew the artists and dreamers. I mean, I said, like someone once said, the black sheep of every family ends up in Los Angeles to pursue art. And, had Bobby Troup not felt the pull and lure of Los Angeles to drive and make his way out west as an actor and a songwriter in show business, we never would have the song "Get Your Kicks on Route 66."
Wow.
So there's incredible truth to that, and I tell everyone that Route 66 is absolutely special, but so are all roads in this country once you get off the highways. And I think
Yeah.
there's Route 66 encompasses city blocks as well as small town main streets and rural back roads. And I think that everyone really just kind of needs to go out there and find their own Route 66, because I mean there's a Route 66 closer to you than you probably realize.
Yeah, it is. A couple of things there. Scott Piotrowski, I tease him a lot. If every community in Route 66, along Route 66, had someone as myopic and anal as Scott is about his hometown,
Mhm.
I can only imagine how vibrant Route 66 would be. And he helped me a lot. I've had the opportunity for Scott to give me a few tours through the theater district and other things there in Los Angeles, and it's just amazing stuff. One other thing though, you mentioned finding your own Route 66 in small town. I was in Michigan a while back, and I was on US, I think it was 12, down in a little town of Jonesville, Michigan. And I found the Deal Automobile Company. Can you imagine the advertising you would have had with that? They still had a deal. And in that better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all, the old Deal Automobile Factory is now an apartment complex. But before that, it was a company that was the largest manufacturer of Barbie doll accessories in the world. Jonesville, Michigan. Who would have known?
Well, hey, everything comes from somewhere, don't it?
It does. Yeah, the Los Angeles, you mentioned the stars and celebrities, and you also mentioned the Will Rogers Ranch. There's an example. He migrated that direction.
Hmm.
And-
And they called it the Will Rogers Highway.
yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There is that theater district in downtown Los Angeles, the historic theater which is at the Western Terminus, the original Western Terminus of 66. Those theaters are true movie palaces.
Mhm.
If anybody gets a chance to get downtown there, 7th and Broadway, my gosh, those things are spectacular.
Mhm. And and LA is too special I mean, like the Googie architecture that you get there, the signs. I mean, I think that something that Los Angeles has that New York doesn't is it has much more in terms of income diversity, and because of that, I think that you find like a lot of dive bars and motels and diners and places like that have just survived in ways that you don't find in New York because of just how horrific not that real estate isn't horrific in LA, it is, but I think that there are a lot of a lot of that kind of culture has survived in LA in ways that it hasn't in New York.
Well, as one fella told me once, the difference too is the weather.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned economic diversity. I had a fella tell me, he says, I may be homeless out here in California, but at least when I starve to death, I'll be warm.
Oh, absolutely. And anyone in New York who says that they haven't felt tempted by LA and California at some point, they're lying through their teeth, man. Especially, my goodness, it's probably about 28 degrees right now. It's cold here. and I didn't have the boiler in my building broke earlier this week. I had no heat for a few days. I mean, a boiler can't break in July or August, man, let me tell you.
Well, it's like the old saying, the roof isn't leaking because it's not raining.
Yep, of course, of course.
What are your plans for Vanishing Postcards? May I ask? Are you got a new season you're starting? Or?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, there is Vanishing Postcards is a bottomless well, and I guess I'll explain. I haven't really explained it to those good people who were with us listening today, but Vanishing Postcards, it's a documentary travelogue. And I chose that title because each episode of the series provides a snapshot of a different place. And if there's a common thread in the places that I visit and features, that you just don't know how much longer a lot of them are going to be around, or they're representative of fading cultures, histories, traditions that you just don't hear so much about anymore. So the first season was entirely Texas-based. The second season, I drove Route 66 from Oklahoma to California, spoke with over 100 people along the way. And I think when I started it, my goal and dream was, I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to get X number of subscribers and listeners, and I'm going to monetize this thing through advertising. But then you get to work in podcasts, you discover that it is the least discoverable field out there. And so it remains very much a self-financed love project. But through it, miraculously, it has served as a living portfolio for my work. And as a result of it, I've been able to get work consistently as a narrative audio producer. And I'm very privileged to work now for a show called Gravy, which shares stories of the changing American South through the foods we eat. A great irony is that New York is my base, but I have become their go-to Texas resource. And so whenever there's a Texas story, I'm down there on the ground, reporting, sharing stories about the incredible food that we have in Texas. And I have another piece that I'm working on with them. But best of all, though, recently through Vanishing Postcards, I was awarded a grant to go to the great city of Springfield, Illinois, and manage an oral history project there. I interviewed and profiled with a documentary photographer 17 people who've borne witness to that city's transitions of '66, or have somehow had an impact of it. That was an incredibly rewarding experience, and I recently shared 2 new episodes that drew on that material. There's no shortage of ideas of things I would love to do. I would love to do a season here in New York based on nightlife, looking at jazz clubs. I mean, profiling places of that nature. But it is always just, it is an issue of do, re, mi, and funding. Is what it is. At this point, it's I am at a point where I have to, I gotta pay the bills and everything. So I'm pursuing funding opportunities for it, but there certainly is plenty of gas left in the tank. There will be more. It's just an issue of figuring out, balancing funding, this, that, and the other.
Well, this is the kind of thing, when you have a gift like you do for doing this, it has to continue. It's in you.
Mm-hmm.
As far as funding, well, I can tell you, podcasting, writing books, all of it.
Oh yeah.
I didn't intend Jim Hinckley's America to be a nonprofit organization,
Mm-hmm.
but it has been.
Oh
Uh,
sure.
so I have side jobs that keep this habit going.
Oh yeah. Oh
And,
absolutely.
and
I've got my side jobs and side hustles too. So it's all an issue of time and money. Believe me.
that's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. And there's so many stories. Gosh, and the stories you put out too. The other thing about what I love about the way you do this, you not only share their story, but you weave into it a broader context, and I find what you do, the people you get to talking, your stories, they're inspirational people.
Hmm.
They may not realize it. They may not think they are. They may think they're merely, like you said, custodians, but they're truly inspirational people.
Oh, absolutely. And and they're the ones that I'm interested in talking to and hearing their stories. We talk about just how you were talking earlier about how divided things are, which is, I don't know anyone who likes this, but at the end of the day, it's like, is someone working hard? That's what's important to me, and
Yeah,
I think that deserves to be honored and celebrated.
yeah, and like I say, and these people that have a passion for these little towns, their little corner of the world.
Hmm.
That is,
Oh well,
and try.
you talk about someone like Angel Delgadillo.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
I think you said to me once that he's just about the happiest man in the world, and he has received opportunities to travel all over the world, but he is happy there in Seligman, and it's testament to what Angel has done for his town and the world. I was in Italy this past summer. I was in this small town called Luano on the Ligurian coast. We weren't just the only Americans there, we were the only foreigners there. But who do I find there's this little celebration going on in the plaza, and what do I look over? But I see this older Italian couple wearing matching shirts that say Seligman, Arizona, Route 66 on them. And
yeah.
I went up and spoke to them, and they said this was our dream. We had always dreamed of traveling Route 66. And there was Seligman, Arizona represented in this small town on the Ligurian coast in Italy. I mean, it's remarkable.
Angel is probably, if is speaking of inspirational small town people, he's got to top the list. He's not a prideful. He's humble. 96, I think now.
Hmm.
Still lives in the house he was born in. Uh, he, he just, yeah, it's amazing what has been able to do. He was the catalyst for a large part of this Route 66 renaissance, and he
Absolutely.
did it from his hometown. He did it with a goal of keeping his hometown alive,
Hmm.
and in the process, he inspired just an absolutely a bunch of people.
It is. And, the root is, of course, enjoying this wonderful, exciting renaissance right now. But, we have to remember that all things are cyclical, and we have to think about how we build a future for Route 66. But, people talk often, though, about, great figures in the Route's past. But I'd wager that a lot of the people that you meet driving the way
Did we lose?
are building that future. Be talking about some of the remarkable figures that future generations are going to be talking about. The people who are out there running these businesses, making things work, just like
Yeah.
people always have.
Well, yeah, the Route 66 has always been in a state of evolution. And
Yes.
my concern with the Route 66 Centennial is we have people looking at it as a destination
Hmm.
instead of
Hmm.
the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another.
Yes.
And you mentioned a new generation. Well, Brady Wilson, yourself, Reese Martin, and his wife Sam. It's us old timers are. It's time to move aside. These
Mhm.
folks are the ones that's going to be carrying the torch.
Oh yes, and we have to make certain that Route 66 isn't just speaking to a select audience of older retired roadies as well. God love them, but nostalgia has played a hugely important, valuable role in Route 66's renaissance. The glare of neon had so much to do with my choice to take this project on, but we have to make certain that it's telling a broader story than just that
Yeah,
as well. Hmm.
yeah, most definitely because it's a excuse me, it's a stage for American societal evolution. The work of Candace Taylor with the Green Book projects, the Native American experience on Route 66. the immigrants on Route 66 that have opened restaurants, the Ariston Cafe, the Falcon Restaurant in Winslow. Yeah, this is all much broader than just a highway, and it's yeah, it's got to change. It's got to evolve. It makes people nervous. You mentioned the older retiree roadies. I was at a conference, a World Monuments conference in Anaheim several years ago. This is their words, not mine. But if we're going to keep Route 66 alive, we have to find a way to appeal to more than just old fat white people. That was their words, not mine. But and that is a challenge.
Oh, it absolutely is. And you know, there are issues that we have in this country that are going to be tied up with that too. But you know, but yes, we're on the cusp of becoming a majority minority society, and you can either you know, embrace that, or you can run in fear. But you know, that's just the reality, and we just have to make certain that people feel safe and are having a good time and are able to make their own memories on Route 66. You know, those people like you who remember 66 and its much hyped golden age aren't always going to be around. But if we can get younger people out there, you know, my friend Penny Black always says, people say, get your kicks on Route 66. She says, well, let's get our kids on Route 66. And I think that's something that needs to be happening.
Well, one of the things that fascinates me personally on Route 66 is I'm almost 70, and you have to be pretty much my age or older to have a connection to Route 66 when it was Route 66. And so it fascinates me, the international interest in Route 66, and the fact that younger people, such as yourself, Reese Martin, Brady, that are so deeply enamored with the Route 66. It intrigues me because these people have no context, so to speak, no direct roots to Route 66 when it was Route 66. And it intrigues me how it can inspire that.
There's that legend there. There's a myth that's attached to it, and I think we all want to go out and see what that really is all about.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of younger people open businesses on Route 66, and I'm excited by that. I'm seeing a lot of 40 and under crowd get involved and open businesses, take on old businesses and give them a new life with a little bit of a twist, or creating their own interpretation of the Route 66 experience through a business. I think that's very important.
Oh yeah, well, but you know, Route 66 is always going to call the dreamers, and God love them.
Earl's Motor Court in Winslow is a great example. I don't know if you've met Blas and Angela. My guess is they're the 45 plus or minus a couple of years, but they both grew up on the so-called wrong side of the tracks in Winslow. Both their families were strictly service people, gas station waitresses, things of that nature. Same with Blas and Angela. They came into a little bit of money and they decided they wanted to do more. They bought the 1953 Marble Court Motel and have transformed it into Earl's Motor Court. It's just fascinating what these people are finding there.
Oh, and thank God they exist, because you know oh man, I can't think of anything more arduous than owning and running a motel when you're dealing with cleaning beds and plumbing issues and, you know, late night check-ins, early morning checkouts. But thank God these people are out there who want to do this, and you see it in Tucumcari as well with you know, so many of the motel owners there who are just doing incredible work.
Yeah, David Brenner and Brady just shared with us a new young couple with some family ties is taking on the U Drop In Cafe in.
Yes, that's and yes, such good news there. I mean, it's wonderful that the U Drop reopened for business a few years ago, and I'm so glad to know that that's going to go, because people want to be able to sit down at a diner counter and get themselves a milkshake, for heaven's sakes.
One of the more intriguing chapters on Route 66 that I've been following, we had them on the program, is Blanca Schaefer and her husband have taken on Jericho, Texas.
Mm.
And there is no Jericho, Texas. I mean, it literally is gone. There is an auto court that is one step from collapsing. And they've taken this project to preserve its history, to discover the town's history. And they're doing some absolutely amazing things with a town that hasn't existed for 60 years. And that's kind of amazing.
Well, I'll have to add that one to my list of stops next time I find myself out there.
You would really find them. I have words to even describe this couple. They've started growing things out there. If this isn't a bizarre coincidence for you, they acquired the old town site and property, and started doing research in its history. And much to their surprise, I believe it was her husband, they found out that her husband's grandfather had actually owned a business in Shamrock at one point.
Hmm.
And they had no clue when they bought the property.
Wow. Well, some things are meant to be, and
Yes.
you can discover those links every now and then after the fact.
I want to encourage everybody to check out your podcast. And when I publish this afternoon, and I'll do a blog post on the program later, I'll have a link to Vanishing Postcards. I think it'll inspire a lot of people to look at their community different. And
sure.
more importantly, I think the great legacy of your program is that it's encouraging people to look at the people they meet differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be the greatest legacy.
Well, I think, I was talking about the importance of listening earlier, and I really kind of like to think of each one of my episodes and interviews as kind of an exercise in empathy. And I think we need more of that. And I thank you for feeling and recognizing that, Jim.
Thank you. Evan, I want to thank you for taking time from your Sunday morning to do this.
Oh, Jim, it's always a pleasure chatting and hanging out with you. Believe me, it really is.
Well, being one of the old farts, I tell you, I appreciate having a younger perspective, and it keeps me from getting too old and stale. Getting to see it through your eyes and seeing it through the eyes of Brady and Reese and some of the others that are out here working so hard to share their gifts, their talents, and their passion for the American story.
No, and God loved Reese too. I mean, I remember the first time I met him. I interviewed him for the show. I said, so many of these historical people who are involved in these historical organizations you find are, older women. What made you want to get involved with Route 66 in the way that you're doing? He said, well, precisely that. There need to be younger people out there. And so Reese, we love you for doing what you're doing. We really do.
I've been very fortunate. I've been able to work with schools. I've got a school program coming here on the 28th. I was able to speak in some schools in Germany. And one of the classes I worked with in Phoenix, I was really honored 2 years ago. First generation immigrant boy, 12 years old, very sharp, decided to do a Route 66 project for the state history day. And he won the state championship.
Oh, great.
That's a great story. And, speaking of the past, the present, and the future, and I again want to thank you for taking time today, I do need to give a shout out to our sponsors. And if you'll indulge me for about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll do that. This is, I'm like a pygmy in the rainforest that's never seen a lighter. I'm fascinated by technology, don't claim to understand it. But let me share with you, this is a plug for our advertisers. And I created this using AI. Let me share this with you.
Well, folks, another episode of Coffee with Jim is in the books. And I got to say, it was a real treat having Evan Stern on the show with us today.
You know, Evan really brought the energy this morning. I mean, that guy's enthusiasm for Route 66 and all those forgotten stories is just incredible.
Yeah, and it's really infectious. You know what I mean? Like, you can't help but get swept up in his excitement for those little hidden gems and the history behind them.
Absolutely. And speaking of hidden gems in history, that's kind of what we try to do here on Coffee with Jim every week, right? Bringing those stories, those slices of Americana to life before they fade away.
Exactly. And to all our listeners out there tuning in this Sunday morning, thank you. We wouldn't be here without you guys joining us for this weekly cup of coffee and dose of adventure.
Speaking of adventure, though, we've got another great episode lined up for next Sunday. We're going to be diving deep into the heart of Route 66 once again.
That's right. We'll be joined by Tim Webb and Lenore Knutson, a couple of true visionaries from Kingman, Arizona.
And let me tell you, these two have a passion for Studebakers and Volkswagens that's just unreal. They've managed to weave that passion into a story of Renaissance on Route 66.
Yeah, it's a truly inspiring story of how individual passions can revitalize a whole community. They've created this amazing blend of history and innovation in Kingman, and it's a real testament to the enduring spirit of the Mother Road.
Absolutely. So if you want to hear their story and learn more about the magic they're creating in Kingman, be sure to tune in next Sunday.
And hey, while you're at it, why not become a follower of the Jim Hinckley's America Facebook page? We share all sorts of cool stuff over there, photo stories and updates on everything Route 66.
Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the Coffee with Jim podcast on Podbean too. That way you'll never miss an episode.
Now, speaking of things you shouldn't miss, I got to give a shout out to all the amazing sponsors who make Coffee with Jim possible. First up, we have the Enchanted Trails Trading Post and RV Park in Albuquerque.
Now, this place is something special, folks. It's like stepping back in time to a classic 1940s trading post, but with all the modern amenities you could ask for in an RV park. And those views of the Sandia Mountains, just breathtaking.
You said it. And while you're there, be sure to say hi to Vicky. She's been a pillar of the Route 66 Association of New Mexico for years. She's a wealth of knowledge about the area and the history of the Mother Road.
Next up, we have the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. It's the oldest continuously operated motel on Route 66, a true icon of the Mother Road.
You can feel the history in every nook and cranny of this place, folks. It's got this charming vintage elegance to it that'll transport you right back in time. And if you're lucky enough to meet Connie during your stay, tell her we said hi.
And for a taste of 1960s swank, you got to check out the Roadrunner Lodge Motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico. This Route 66 gem blends modern comforts with classic Americana style.
Oh, and don't forget to ask David about the Tiki Room. It's a slice of paradise right there on the Mother Road.
Now, if you're thinking about planning your own unforgettable road trip, you got to check out Route Trip USA. They're the experts in bespoke travel experiences, whether you want to cruise Route 66 in a classic convertible, explore California on a motorcycle, or take a breathtaking journey through the Canadian Rockies on the Rocky Mountaineer train.
These guys can make it happen. They're the real deal. And a huge thank you goes out to all of our Patreon supporters. You guys are the backbone of this show. Your contributions make these stories possible and help us develop educational programs that keep the spirit of exploration alive.
We couldn't do it without you. And last but not least, we got to give some love to the Cactus Inn Motel in McLean, Texas. This cozy little haven on Route 66 is a true time capsule offering a genuine 1950s experience complete with Texas hospitality.
You'll feel right at home stepping back in time at the Cactus Inn. So to all our guests, our listeners, and our incredible sponsors, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making Coffee with Jim possible.
We'll be back next Sunday with another cup of coffee and another great conversation right here on Coffee with Jim.
So until then, keep the spirit of adventure alive, folks. We'll see you on the road.
Safe travels, everybody.
And happy trails.
My goodness, that was freaky.
I'm so amazed by what I'm almost speechless by the things that are taking place with technology, even though I am most comfortable in the world of the Model A Ford.
Sure.
This is a free program put out by Google. If you have a Google email account, it's a Notebook LM. And not only can you create audio, but you can create entire the primary use is project development, correlation of materials. You can cut and paste pieces from blogs, insert blog links. You can put in PDF files and then ask it to create a project outline, that kind of thing. But you can create audio content. And I've been tinkering with it. And that's an example.
Wow.
I just, yeah, I created that yesterday, and all I did with that was I put in links to your podcast,
Oh,
and links to my podcast, and links to my advertising sponsor's website. That's all I did, and I asked
incredible.
it for a 2 to 4 minute closing for Jim Hinckley's Coffee with Jim. Uh, Advertising sponsors mentioning next week's program. I just put in the notes, and I had to tweak it once or twice, delete the audio, redo it, change the wording a little bit, what I asked, and poof. Next thing you know,
Wow.
I have virtual hosts.
That is magic. Absolute magic.
Yeah, it is the most exciting stuff. This AI is the most exciting thing I've ever encountered. It is the most terrifying thing I've ever encountered.
Yep. We'll just see where the chips fall.
Yeah, if somebody with my limited tech skills can do this and create stories and preserve things and use this, what can somebody with malicious intent that knows what the hell they're doing? What can
Oh
they
yeah.
create?
Yeah.
Yeah, disturbing.
It's a brave new world out there.
It's a new era for storytelling, my friend.
Absolutely.
Evan, thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for joining us this morning. I for one, am greatly appreciative
Oh,
of
Jim,
both.
I'm greatly appreciative of you. I mean, believe me, you've blazed a trail for us all out there. So we belong to a mutual admiration society, and it's just a great time to kick it with you. It really
Well,
is.
thank you. It's nice to know that but it's a team effort.
It
It
is.
really is.
Rising tides lift all boats. It is a group effort. It is.
Rising tides, yes, they rise all boats, or rising septic tank levels can create quite a stink in your yard.
Oh
But
goodness.
there's another thought. Hey, you know what we got coming up a couple weeks? We've got Tim and Lenore Webb next week. They have taken an entire block of downtown Kingman on Route 66 that was derelict, and they have created Desert Outfitters and a 1946 service station. A 1930s cafe that's been derelict for over 30 years is now Scoops on 66. They cleared out a couple condemned buildings that were being used by homeless people. And they took an abandoned roadhouse and made mud on 66. And then the part that they cleaned out, they created Tin Can Alley with vintage Airstream trailers as Airbnbs. This is going to be fun. And they like Studebakers and Volkswagens. And then we're going to talk to Gary Sosnecki from Lebanon Historic Society about all the things going on in Lebanon, Missouri. Kaisa Barthuli will be with us from the National Park Service in February. And then we're going to have Joel Baker from the American Giants Museum with us in February as well. So we got a lot of great stuff coming down the pike. Well, my friends, we will bid you adios until next week with a little bit of music from Joe and Woody and the boys of the Road Crew at roadcrew66.com. If you need some road trip inspiring music, this is the place to go. Or if you need a theme song for your road trip, Road Crew 66.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
My friends, thank you again. Thank you, Evan. Thanks everybody who joined us. Program will be published later this afternoon on Spotify and other podcast platforms. Stay warm and travel safe. We'll have information up about how you can help the folks in LA as well. The archived programs are available on We have a website on Podbean. Just look for Jim Hinckley Coffee with Jim. And we have a website there. We have an embedded player on the Jim Hinckley's America website, on the B.News, and the Kingman Tours page, kingman.tours. If you'd like an embedded player for your website, just let me know. The idea is to inspire road trips by telling people where to go and sharing America's story. My friends, take care, and we'll do this again next week. Evan, take care of yourself, and be careful in Central Park.
Same to yes.
We'll share, so next time we get together, we will share stories of nudity in America. That's
oh my, you never know what, I'll just say this much. You never know what you're going to see in Central Park.
When we do that, I will share with you a story about some retired people who moved out here in the desert, that moved out here for one reason. They decided they didn't want to wear clothes anymore. But that's a story for another day.
Well, I think I've heard it on the record that Bob Waldmeyer kind of liked to do that every now and then. He would have been happy without clothes half the time, apparently. So.
Oh, my friend. On that note, we'll talk to everybody next week. Vaya con Dios. You bet, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.